Long before plates, cups, or even the idea of comfort existed, our ancestors stood at the edge of survival with nothing but their hands and their will to endure. Imagine a world where every meal was a challenge, every day a battle against hunger, cold, and predators. In such a world, the very first tools of survival were born, not out of luxury, but out of sheer necessity. These tools were crude, simple, and often overlooked by modern standards, yet they carried the weight of human survival. A sharp stone edge became the difference between tearing flesh with teeth or cutting it cleanly for sharing. A wooden spear, hardened by fire, transformed fragile hunters into predators, capable of challenging beasts many times their size. Even the hollow of a bone or a shell became the earliest containers, allowing water to be carried and food to be stored. These were not just tools, they were lifelines, each one a spark of human ingenuity in the darkness of prehistory. Before plates and cups, before civilization itself, the first tools of survival shaped the destiny of humankind, teaching us to adapt, to innovate, and to fight for a future that would eventually lead to the world we know today. As the ages drifted forward like a slow river, humanity, still without plates or cups, continued to weave its fragile existence into the fabric of the earth, and every small discovery, every humble tool, carried with it the promise of peace amidst hardship, so that when you close your eyes and imagine those days, you can almost feel the cool stone beneath ancient hands, the quiet rhythm of strikes as flakes broke away, each sound like a heartbeat echoing through deep time, steady, patient, enduring. The stone knife grew sharper, the spear grew longer, the fire burned brighter, and with each repetition came comfort, a soothing pattern of learning and remembering, as if the earth itself was teaching its children to survive. In the forests, the rustle of leaves became background music to lives lived in gentle cycles of gathering, hunting, resting, and moving, while rivers whispered their eternal songs, offering not only water but also stones polished smooth, shells shaped into cups, and driftwood ready to be carved, all gifts waiting quietly to be noticed. In these moments of discovery, there was no rush, no noise of cities, only the calm unfolding of awareness, the soft realization that nature was both challenge and ally, a teacher whose lessons could be carried in the palm of a hand. Families walked together across vast grasslands, children learning through imitation, holding tiny stones, trying to shape them as their parents did, their laughter soft against the wind, their eyes reflecting firelight at dusk, and slowly the knowledge passed on, not in words, but in gestures, in touch, in patient repetition, a rhythm as calming as the lull of waves on a shore. And when the day's tasks were done, when meat was roasted on embers, when berries were collected in bark containers, when water was lifted from streams in hollow gourds, then came the quiet moments, the soothing silence of night where the stars, stretched endlessly above, glowing softly like scattered embers of a cosmic fire, watching silently over humankind's fragile beginnings. In the caves, drawings spread further, not hurried, not chaotic, but deliberate and calm. Each stroke of ochre or charcoal a meditative act, a prayer offered to the unknown, a way of saying, we were here, we endured, we dreamed. And among those dreams, tools were constant companions, not grand inventions, but small assurances, stones that fit comfortably in the palm, spears that extended the reach of an arm, shells that cradled precious drops of water. And in this simplicity, there was peace, the kind of peace that comes when every object has purpose, when nothing is wasted, when life flows like a steady current rather than a storm. Think of the steady rhythm of footsteps across earth, the soothing sound of grinding seeds on stone, the calm flicker of shadows on cave walls, and realize that even in hardship there was harmony. For each challenge brought a solution, and each solution brought a deeper bond with the world. Humanity's earliest tools were not just instruments of survival, but lullabies in their own way, gentle reassurances that no matter how fierce the night, there would be firelight, no matter how vast the hunger, there would be meat carved from bone. No matter how far the journey, there would be water carried safely in a vessel, and so the days stretched into seasons, the seasons into years, and the years into centuries, all carried forward on the quiet strength of these simple creations, until survival itself began to feel like a rhythm, a song whispered across generations, soft enough to soothe, strong enough to endure. And tonight, as you drift into rest, imagine yourself among them, lying near the warmth of fire, listening to the steady hum of ancient voices, feeling the comfort of tools resting nearby. Not grand or ornate, but honest and faithful, guardians of life, companions of hope, reminders that even in the simplest shapes of stone and wood, humanity found the calm to endure, the strength to dream, and the peace to close tired eyes under the eternal watch of the stars. And so, as the quiet river of time flowed on, humanity continued to walk hand in hand with its simplest creations. Those first tools that whispered of survival, of comfort, of belonging. And as you let your breath slow and your mind soften, you can almost see them, gathered beneath the canopy of stars, their fires glowing like warm lanterns against the vast night, their hands busy, but their hearts calm, shaping stone, smoothing wood, binding sinew, each act steady, measured, patient, like the rhythm of waves brushing against the shore. And in this rhythm lay reassurance. For no matter how large the wilderness, no matter how uncertain the dawn, there was always the gentle promise that hands could craft, fire could protect, tools could endure. Imagine the slow grinding of grains against a flat stone, the sound carrying through the quiet of morning like a soft hum, a meditation carved into each gesture, as mothers taught daughters, fathers taught sons, and the young learned by watching, repeating, failing and trying again, until each movement became second nature, flowing with the grace of something eternal. The wooden spear, hardened by fire, leaned against a wall of earth, waiting for its purpose, while nearby, a hollowed gourd cradled water, its curved shape catching the flicker of flame, and further still, a woven basket rested, filled with berries, gathered under the sun, its fibers interlaced with patience and care, holding not only food, but also the quiet effort of countless hands. In the evenings, when the air cooled and the forest sighed, stories rose with the smoke, not hurried but drawn out like lullabies. Stories of animals seen and dreams remembered, of hunts that tested courage and spirits that guarded the earth. And always the tools, simple and unassuming, were part of these tales, symbols of resilience, tokens of the bond between humans and the world they walked. Listen, if you can, to the soft tapping of stone against stone, a rhythm that lulled not only children into drowsy comfort, but entire clans into the belief that life, though fragile, was manageable, that solutions could be shaped, that, even in darkness there was light, and in hunger there was hope. Imagine lying near the warmth of fire, hearing the soft crackle, smelling the faint sweetness of roasted roots, feeling the presence of sharpened flints and carved bones nearby, as though these humble companions were guardians keeping watch through the night. And with each passing season, each circle of the moon, these tools grew not in grandeur, but in meaning, carrying forward traditions, carrying forward peace, until even the stars themselves seemed to lean closer, as if listening to the whispers of humanity's beginnings. And in this vast silence, you begin to sense that life was not about rushing towards something grand, but about finding calm in each small act. The binding of sinew to wood, the careful carving of bone, the gentle smoothing of clay, the soft placing of food into baskets woven by patient fingers. All of it a meditation, all of it a prayer, a steady reminder that existence could be gentle even when the earth was harsh. For though storms swept across plains, though predators lurked in shadows, though hunger sometimes gnawed, there was always the rhythm of work, the quiet comfort of tools, the fire that flickered faithfully, the stars that never failed to rise. And with these constants came rest, came assurance, came the soothing promise that tomorrow, too, could be endured. So let your eyes grow heavy, let your thoughts drift like smoke rising into the night, and know that in the beginning, before plates and cups, before cities and roads, there was only this: hands shaping survival, voices singing softly by the fire, hearts resting in the certainty that even the smallest creations could hold the greatest peace. And in that stillness, humanity dreamed of the future, dreamed of you. And in those dreams, there was calm, there was continuity, and there was the eternal embrace of a world that whispered gently, "Sleep now, rest now, for survival is assured and the stars will keep their watch." And as the night stretched long beneath the endless dome of stars, humanity found that survival was not only in the tools they shaped or the food they gathered, but also in the rhythms of life that gave comfort, meaning, and rest for after. The day's struggles, after the hunt and the gathering. There was the circle of firelight where voices rose gently, where hands tapped stone and wood to echo the beating of hearts. And in those steady rhythms, the first music was born. Not loud or complex, but soft and calming. A hum carried on the breeze, a chant that soothed children into dreams, a melody that reminded all who listened that they belonged to one another and to the world around them. Within these circles of warmth, stories were spoken slowly, like water flowing over smooth stones. Stories of animals that taught lessons, of spirits that watched from the forest, of ancestors whose voices lingered in the wind, and every word carried not only knowledge but reassurance, weaving courage into those who listened, weaving calm into those who feared. Shelters rose nearby, not grand halls but simple lean-tos of branches and skins, curved domes of woven reeds, shallow caves dressed with leaves and moss. And yet within these spaces there was safety, the sense that walls, no matter how humble, could cradle sleep and keep the chill of the night at bay. And so when the wind howled or the snow fell heavy, families huddled close within these fragile walls, breathing together, dreaming together, their tools and baskets and firewood resting quietly at their side, guardians of continuity. And when storms raged outside, the flicker of flame danced upon walls, casting shadows that swayed and shifted, turning every figure into something larger, something magical. And from those shadows came imagination, visions of beasts and spirits, dreams of hunts yet to come and mysteries yet to be understood. And in those flickers, the first dances were born, slow, swaying movements of arms and bodies, rising and falling with the pulse of the fire, not as displays of strength, but as gestures of connection, of rhythm, of gratitude for warmth and food and life itself. And the children watched with heavy eyes, lulled not only by the glow, but by the gentle patterns of movement that reminded them of the heartbeat they had once known in the womb. And so the night became not only a time of rest, but of quiet celebration, where survival transformed into ritual, where necessity softened into culture, and the simple acts of tapping, swaying, chanting, and storytelling gave peace to minds that carried the weight of survival all day long. And as you imagine this, let your breath grow steady. Let your thoughts loosen like the fibers of a woven basket. Because in those ancient nights, calm was not something sought in silence alone, but in the gentle weaving of voices, flames, music, and stories, each one binding the clan closer together, making the vast and dangerous world feel smaller, safer, kinder, even for a moment. For to sleep in those days was to surrender not only to the dark, but to trust in the tools resting nearby, in the fire that glowed faithfully, in the stories that promised guidance, and in the presence of others who lay close, their warmth shared, their dreams flowing like rivers into one another, creating a harmony as natural and soothing as the lull of distant wind across the plains. And so, in this way, humanity learned not only to survive, but to rest, not only to endure, but to dream. And in the stillness of firelit nights, they discovered that survival was more than meat and fire. It was belonging, it was music, it was the comfort of knowing that together, in the embrace of shelter and story, they could find peace even at the edge of a vast and untamed world. And that peace, that calm, still whispers to us across the ages, inviting you to now, in this moment, to let go, to close your eyes, to drift with them into a sleep cradled by firelight, by song, by the steady beat of hearts that once long ago learned the art of resting beneath the stars. And as the fire crackled softly and the long winters pressed close, humanity discovered that survival was not only of the body, but also of the spirit. For in the stillness of the caves, when shadows stretched across stone and silence grew deep, the first symbols began to take shape, drawn by trembling hands with ochre and charcoal. Simple lines that became animals, spirals, handprints, shapes of meaning beyond words, and each mark was both memory and prayer. A way to speak to the unseen, to the mysteries of the world that loomed vast and silent around them. And as you let your breath slow, you can almost feel the cool stone beneath their fingers, the careful strokes made in the flickering glow of torches, the hum of chants echoing softly in the chamber, a calming rhythm of sound and symbol weaving together. These paintings were not decorations but quiet promises, gentle offerings to the spirits of mammoth and bison, of lion and bear, as if by honoring them with images, humanity could find balance, respect, and protection. And so each drawing became part of a ritual, each mark a whisper of gratitude and hope. Imagine a child watching, eyes wide, as an elder pressed a hand against stone and filled the outline with pigment, leaving behind a ghostly echo of presence, a silent assurance that we were here, we endured, we belong. And in that moment, the child felt calm, comforted by the thought that survival was more than hunger and fear. It was also memory, story, and connection to something greater. In these caves, voices rose in low chants, steady and soothing. Songs that flowed like water, that spoke of ancestors walking among stars, of spirits hidden in rivers and winds, of animals that carried power in their bones, and the rhythm of these songs lulled entire clans into a deep peace, a sense that the world was not empty but filled with unseen companions who watched and cared. At times, the flicker of fire turned painted animals into moving beings, shadows making them walk and breathe on the walls. And in those illusions came wonder, awe, and calm, for it felt as though the spirits had joined the circle, keeping company through the dark. And so spirituality was born not in temples or books, but in whispers, in marks upon stone, in dances by fire, in dreams shared beneath skins and stars, each ritual simple yet profound, each symbol carrying the comfort of belief that life was guided, that suffering was not endless, that the world held meaning woven beyond sight. Even when storms raged outside, when predators prowled near, when hunger ached deep, these rituals gave solace, and the people could rest, cradled by the thought that their survival was part of a greater story, that they were not alone. And as you drift now, imagine lying in one of those caves, your body wrapped in fur, the warmth of fire against your skin, the scent of smoke and earth around you, and on the walls above, the painted shapes of mammoths and horses glowing faintly. In the firelight, guardians watching over your sleep, each line a promise, each figure a reminder that you are safe, that the world is vast but not empty, that the ancestors whisper still. And in this endless calm, you find yourself drifting, as they once did, into dreams where symbols come alive, where the spirits walk beside you, where survival and meaning blend into a gentle river carrying you ever forward, soft, steady, and eternal, into the deep embrace of rest. And as the seasons turned and the earth shifted beneath the endless sky, humanity discovered that life was not meant to be lived in one place alone. For the hunger of survival and the pull of curiosity carried their feet across rivers, over mountains, and through valleys where no fire had yet been lit. And in those long journeys, the first migrations began, not rushed or hurried, but steady, like the slow flowing of a great river, each step a note in a song of endurance, each path a thread weaving humans deeper into the fabric of the world. And as you breathe calmly now, you can almost see them, walking, their small groups moving together with quiet determination, elders guiding with memory, children carried on shoulders, baskets of food swaying, tools clinking softly, their voices hushed but hopeful beneath the vast dome of stars. They crossed grasslands where herds of bison moved like thunder, rivers whose waters glimmered cold and endless, forests dense with shadows, and deserts where wind whispered like an ancient spirit. And with every new horizon they learned, they adapted, they grew, leaving behind fires that cooled but carrying forward knowledge that warmed their hearts. Imagine the comfort of resting after such a day, feet weary, bodies wrapped in furs, the firelight flickering against unfamiliar trees. Yet within the circle of family and clan, there was safety, and the vast unknown became less frightening, for they carried their songs, their stories, their tools, and above all, each other. Sometimes they followed the stars, mapping the heavens with memory. Sometimes they followed rivers, knowing water always whispered the way forward. And sometimes they followed herds, their survival intertwined with the movements of the giants. They both revered and pursued, and so the earth became a canvas of footsteps, a map written not with ink, but with patience, courage, and trust in the path ahead. And though storms tested them, though hunger and cold pressed hard, they discovered that movement itself was a kind of peace, that every new fire was a promise of tomorrow, that every horizon held the chance of safety, of food, of belonging. Let your thoughts drift now like their footsteps, slow, steady, soft, carrying you from one moment to the next, each breath a journey of its own, each pause a resting place, until you too feel the calm of migration, the soothing rhythm of progress, and the gentle reminder that home is not always a place, but the people who walk beside you, the stories that guide you, and the fire that warms you wherever the path may lead. And as the people sat by the endless shore, watching the horizon breathe with light, their hearts began to dream not only of surviving upon the land, but of reaching beyond, across that giant expanse that seemed to stretch forever. And so they carved wood into shapes that floated, lashed logs together with vines, testing again and again until they found the first rafts, trembling yet steady beneath their feet. And when they pushed out upon the water, they entered a realm that belonged not to them, but to giants, for the sea was alive with powers vast and eternal, its waves rising like mountains, lifting them high and setting them down gently again, as though reminding them of their smallness. And as you breathe slowly now, you can almost feel that rocking motion, that soft sway of the ocean carrying you, calming you, steady as a lullaby. And beneath them swam creatures so immense that their shadows stretched longer than the boats themselves, ancient beings with fins like sails and tails that beat the water like thunder. Yet the people did not fear, for awe and calmness wrapped their spirits, the giants of the sea teaching them humility and courage, both. And sometimes, at night, when the moon laid a silver path across the waves, they felt as though the ocean itself were guiding them, leading them toward islands where fruit hung heavy, where fires could be lit on new shores. And each journey became part of their song, their stories carrying the memory of giants, the whales, the great turtles, the shadows of creatures long vanished yet still alive in dream. And so the ocean was no longer only a boundary but a bridge, vast and shining, a teacher of patience, of wonder, of respect for powers greater than themselves. And in this way, humanity grew not only in skill but in spirit, understanding that the world was not small and known but boundless, filled with giants that watched from sea and sky. And as the people learned to travel upon the waters, they learned also to rest within its rhythm, to let the great rolling waves soothe their bodies, to let the endless horizon calm their hearts. And you too now can let that same giant rhythm cradle you, the slow tide rocking you toward dreams, the whispers of ancient seas carrying you gently, reminding you that even in the vastness, even among giants, there is peace, there is wonder, and there is always the soft embrace of the ocean's eternal song. And as the ages turned and the earth shifted beneath their wandering feet, the people began to look not only at the creatures that walked beside them, or the waters that carried them, but also at the skies above, those skies that stretched farther than any journey they could ever take, a dome so immense it seemed to swallow even the tallest mountains. And in its vastness they felt both fear and comfort, for the heavens were filled with giants too, not of flesh and bone, but of light and shadow, of storm and silence. And as they lay beside their fires, wrapped in furs against the cold, they would lift their eyes and watch the stars flicker like countless embers, each one distant yet burning, each one telling them that the world was far larger than they had yet touched. And in the slow rhythm of their breathing, they began to weave stories, seeing in those shining points the shapes of mammoths, lions, and hunters, painted not on cave walls, but on the ceiling of the night itself. And the constellations became their guides, their protectors, their storytellers, showing them where to walk, when to rest, and reminding them that above the darkness there was always light, eternal, steady, and unshaken. When storms rolled across the horizon, they saw giants of cloud and thunder, mountains of vapor that reached into the heavens, their bellies lit with fire as lightning split the sky, the sound echoing like the roar of cave lions multiplied 1,000 times. And though they trembled at the noise, they also found calm in knowing that such power was beyond them, that nature itself was greater than their fears. A reminder to be humble, yet a lullaby of endless repetition. Each flash followed by rumbling like a heartbeat in the distance. And when volcanoes stirred, breathing smoke and fire into the sky, they felt the earth's bones alive beneath them. A giant that slept beneath their feet and woke in bursts of flame, shaping the valleys and mountains they would one day cross. Yet even this they learned to accept as part of the great rhythm of the world. The pulse of giants that were older than any living thing. And as you breathe slowly now, you too can feel that rhythm. The rising and falling of something greater than yourself. A calmness hidden within vast power. For just as the people found peace in the presence of giants, so can you. At night, when silence wrapped the plains, they sometimes saw comets streaking across the heavens, burning trails that lit the sky with wonder, and they whispered to one another that these were messengers, giant spirits moving between worlds, carrying news from far beyond the horizon. And each time such a light appeared, they felt both awe and serenity. A reminder that even in darkness, the universe was alive with mystery, and mystery itself was a cradle, rocking them gently toward dreams. Over time, the mountains themselves became giants in their stories, vast guardians whose heads touched the clouds, who drank the rain and gave birth to rivers, whose silence was deeper than words. And when they crossed these ranges, their hearts slowed, their breaths deepened, as though the immensity of stone calmed them, teaching them that endurance was not in speed, but in stillness, not in fire, but in patience. And so the mountains lulled them into quiet, the same way your body can now soften into rest, cradled by the thought of immovable guardians around you. In the valleys they found forests, trees rising like pillars of giants, trunks older than memory, canopies so high they touched the sky, and walking among them felt like stepping into a hall built by beings larger than life, a place where wind whispered secrets through leaves and shadows stretched like protective arms, soothing, cooling, endless, until they lay upon moss and let the forests sing them into slumber. The people began to see giants everywhere, not only in beasts and storms, but in every element of their world, in rivers that thundered across cliffs like voices of the earth, in glaciers that moved slowly, silently, carving valleys with patient strength, in deserts that spread out like oceans of sand where dunes rolled like waves. And in each of these immensities they found a reflection of their own smallness, a truth that did not frighten but comforted, for to be small in a giant's world meant to be carried, sheltered, protected by powers too vast to ever end. And so, in the rhythm of breathing, in the rocking of waves, in the rise of mountains and the fall of storms, they began to rest more deeply, not only their bodies, but their spirits, for they understood that life itself was a journey upon the shoulders of giants, and giants, though immense, moved with grace, with patience, with time that stretched beyond measure, and to live in their presence was to be soothed by eternity. Imagine now those ancient people, their eyes closing by the fire as the wind hummed through valleys, their minds filled with images of stars above and mountains around, of oceans breathing beside them, of beasts moving like shadows at the edge of their dreams. And in that moment they were safe, carried into sleep by the lullaby of giants, the same lullaby that can carry you now, For though the world has changed, the rhythm remains, the steady breath of the sky, the deep heartbeat of the earth, the endless calm of powers greater than any fear, soothing you, guiding you, reminding you that you too are part of the story, and that even among giants there is always rest, always peace, always the soft embrace of sleep. And when the hunters and gatherers, weary from their endless wanderings and the weight of their days, lifted their eyes to the heavens, they found the greatest giants of all, not in the forests, not in the seas, not even in the mountains that towered above them, but in the sky itself, for there hung the sun, blazing like a living fire, too powerful to look at, too steady to be denied, a giant whose light gave warmth to their bones and life to their food, a presence so immense that every dawn felt like the birth of the world anew, and every dusk like a gentle closing of its eyes, and beside it, the moon drifted with silent grace, waxing and waning like a breathing spirit, its phases teaching them patience, its glow guiding their steps through the darkest nights, its calm silver light soothing their hearts when predators prowled just beyond the firelight, as if whispering that even in darkness there was a guardian watching over them. In time they saw that the sun and moon danced together, crossing paths, trading places, painting the sky in rhythms that seemed eternal. And yet, when the moon sometimes slid before the sun, swallowing its fire in sudden shadow, they gasped in awe and fear, for it seemed as though one giant devoured another, the sky itself holding its breath, the air trembling with silence until light returned. And they learned in those moments that giants could fight, could vanish, could return. And in that mystery they found not terror, but wonder, the kind of wonder that settles into the chest and quiets even the loudest thoughts, the kind of wonder that lets you drift into sleep as if carried by invisible hands. Night after night, they watched the stars, countless fires scattered across the sky like sparks from a cosmic hearth. And in their stillness, they saw not randomness, but patterns, hunters and beasts written in light, mammoths arched across the heavens, lions stalking among the constellations, great birds soaring forever among the black. And these patterns became their stories, their myths, their maps, guiding their migrations across plains and deserts, showing them when to plant, when to hunt, when to rest. And in these steady signals from the sky, they felt a lullaby older than memory, a lullaby that said, "You are not lost, for the sky will always guide you home." Some nights, shooting stars tore across the heavens, blazing trails of fire, and to them these were not stones falling, but messengers of giants, voices of the sky reminding them that the world was alive, that the heavens themselves could move and breathe and cry out. And though their hearts pounded, they found calm in the fleeting beauty, the way a flash in the dark could remind them of how small their fears were beneath such immensity. The Milky Way stretched above like a river of light, a pathway of spirits, and they imagined it was the road the ancestors walked after death, a giant bridge linking earth and sky, and beneath its glow they felt both comfort and belonging, as, though even in silence they were never alone, for thousands of spirits walked with them in the stars, the cycles of the sun and moon, the sweep of comets, the hidden rhythm of eclipses. These became the pulse of their lives, and in following that pulse, they learned to align with something larger, something greater, something that held them steady when their own world felt uncertain, and that steadiness seeped into their bones like warmth, a calmness beyond words. The same calmness you can feel now, in the rhythm of your breath, in the quiet stretch of time that flows around you like a gentle current. The people began to paint these giants on cave walls, not just beasts of earth, but circles of light, stars carved into ivory, spirals etched into stone, as if to say, we saw the giants of the sky, and we remembered them, we honored them, we let them live in our stories. And even when storms raged or famine came, the heavens remained steady above, giants who watched, who listened, who carried secrets no hunter could chase and no predator could claim. And that constancy was enough to soothe their fears and remind them that life, no matter how fragile, was part of something endless. And so, lying beneath the stars, their fires crackling low, their children drifting into dreams, they listened to the whispers of the sky, and in those whispers they heard not warnings but songs, not endings but beginnings, songs that told them to rest, to trust, to let go, and to allow the giants of the cosmos to cradle them in silence, in peace, in sleep. And beyond the forests, beyond the plains where mammoths roamed and lions prowled, there stretched a world so vast and unbroken that it seemed endless, a shifting mirror of light and shadow. The ocean, a giant unlike any other, for its body was the world's heartbeat, its breath, the tides that rose and fell with the pull of the moon, and to the first people who stood barefoot on the sand, its vastness was almost too great to comprehend. Yet they watched it patiently, day after day, the waves curling and collapsing like the steady rhythm of a giant sleeping beside them. And slowly, they learned to trust its song, the hush and crash of the surf, lulling them into calm, soothing even the most restless children into sleep. For the ocean was both frightening and comforting, dangerous and tender, a teacher and a guardian. Sometimes its waves rose taller than trees, a wall of water that came thundering forward, carrying with it the raw strength of storms born far beyond the horizon, and the people would climb to higher ground and watch with awe as the sea giants roared, their foaming crests flashing like white fire, their spray carried on the wind, and though their hearts trembled, they also felt small and safe within such grandeur, as if the ocean reminded them that their worries were tiny ripples in a tide that would never end. Beneath those waves lived creatures so immense that the people could only imagine their full size in dreams. Whales whose voices echoed like drums through the water, deep calls that traveled farther than sight, a sound so low and powerful it vibrated in the bones of the listeners and made them feel both fragile and connected, as if a giant spirit was speaking directly to their souls. They told stories of turtles as large as islands, their shells shaped like mountains, carrying entire worlds upon their backs, swimming slowly and silently through the dark waters, patient guardians of time itself, and of serpents longer than rivers, whose twisting bodies stirred whirlpools and whose scales shone like wet stone in the moonlight, slipping just out of sight whenever humans gazed too long. In their dreams, the sea became a bridge between worlds, its waves the footsteps of giants unseen, its horizon the veil between the living and the spirits, and when storms rolled in, with lightning splitting the sky and thunder shaking the air, they believed it was the sea giants calling to the sky giants, a conversation of power too immense for mortals to understand, yet strangely calming to witness, for even in fury the ocean sang in rhythm, its heartbeat steady, its lullaby endless, and as they built small rafts and drifted along its edge, they felt both fear and wonder, their boats rocking gently like cradles upon the giant's chest, every rise and fall a reminder of how fragile they were, yet also how cherished, as though the sea carried them not to harm but to teach, to soothe, to remind them of vastness beyond their struggles. At night, when the stars spilled across the heavens and their light shimmered on the waves, it seemed as though the ocean had gathered the sky into itself, holding the stars close, reflecting the giants above so that land, sea, and heaven became one vast cradle, a dome of comfort in which humanity could rest, dream, and find its place. The ocean was not only a giant of water, but a giant of memory, holding within its depths the bones of creatures long gone, the whispers of storms from ages past, the secrets of rivers and mountains that fed into it. And though no one could see its end, they knew it had always been there and would always remain. And in that eternity, they found peace, the kind of peace that allows eyes to close slowly, breaths to deepen, and sleep to come gently, like a tide washing over the mind. Even today, if you close your eyes and listen within, you can hear that ocean, that giant heartbeat, a steady rhythm that carries you softly toward dreams, reminding you, as it reminded them, that the world is vast, the giants are gentle, and you are safe, rocked by the eternal song of the sea. And when the people wandered far from the shores and across the vast plains, they eventually came to places where the land itself rose upward into shapes so immense that they seemed to touch the very sky, mountains so vast and towering that their peaks disappeared into clouds, and in their stillness the people saw giants greater than any beast of claw or tusk, giants of stone who had been here since before memory, their roots deep in the earth, their shoulders wide as horizons, their crowns wrapped in mist. And though these mountains were silent, their silence was not emptiness, but presence, the calm watchfulness of beings too vast to move quickly, beings who taught patience and endurance simply by existing. Sometimes, as they rested at the base of cliffs, listening to the wind that sighed through cracks and valleys, they felt as though the mountains breathed, a slow, steady exhalation that soothed their own racing thoughts, reminding them that all things, fear, hunger, struggle, were small compared to the vastness of stone that had stood for ages unbroken. Yet not all mountains were silent, for within some of them burned fires that no human hand had kindled, flames older than memory, heat that rumbled beneath the ground like the heartbeat of a restless giant. And when these volcanoes stirred, the people trembled at their fury and their awe, for the mountains did not only stand still, they could roar, they could speak, they could pour rivers of fire down their sides, painting the night with orange and red, turning the sky into a living canvas of light and smoke. The people told stories of fire giants slumbering within the earth, and when they turned in their sleep, the mountains rumbled, the ground shook, and the air filled with ash. But though their power was terrible, it was also strangely calming, for to see the world so alive, so immense, so filled with forces beyond control, was to remember how small one's worries were, how gentle and quiet one's life could be beneath such grandeur. At night, when the fires faded and the peaks glowed softly in the starlight, the mountains became guardians again, watching over valleys where rivers curled, where animals grazed, where people made their fires small and fragile against the immensity of stone. And in that shelter they found comfort, for the giants of the land were both fierce and protective, both still and alive, and even in their danger they offered lessons: to endure, to rise, to rest, to burn brightly when the moment demanded. The people learned to climb their lower slopes, gathering stones that had broken free, carving tools from their strength, and even those small pieces carried the memory of the giants themselves, each flake of flint, each shard of obsidian, a whisper. From the mountain's heart, a reminder that even fragments of greatness can hold power. And so, when storms rolled across their summits and lightning crowned their peaks, the people did not fear but listened, watched, rested, knowing that they were small yet safe, sheltered by the calm immensity of beings too vast to vanish, beings who had watched the world change countless times and would watch still when all else was forgotten. And now, as you close your eyes, you can imagine those mountains standing silently around you, their presence steady and unshaken, their patience endless, their strength unyielding, and in their shadow you too can rest, soothed by the thought that giants of stone cradle the earth, and that even when fire rumbles within, the mountains themselves whisper only calm, only steadiness, only sleep.